My daughter stood in my living room and calmly said, "Dad, we think it's time you move out. This house is ours now." Her words hit me harder than any storm, but I just nodded and forced a small smile. She had no idea the quiet resolve forming behind my eyes. After a lifetime of love and sacrifice, I was being cast aside by my own flesh and blood. I went along with their plan without a fight, at least on the surface. But when they finally tried to take over my home, they walked straight into a surprise I had spent weeks preparing. Betrayal would meet justice in the most unexpected way. You won't believe how I turned the tables on them. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. It hadn't always been this way. If you told me a year ago that my only child would turn against me, I would have called you crazy. For most of our lives, my daughter Laura and I were incredibly close. After her mother, my dear wife, Linda, passed away a decade ago, it was just the two of us navigating our grief. I devoted myself to being both father and mother, and every decision I made from then on was for Laura's happiness. I paid for her college tuition so she could graduate debt-free, fulfilling the promise I made to Linda on her deathbed that our girl would never lack support. When Laura started her career in marketing, she even lived at home for a couple of years to save money. Those were unexpectedly joyful days, cooking dinners together, sharing our day's stories in this same kitchen, finding comfort in each other's company. Not long after, Laura met the man who would become my son-in-law, Travis. He was ambitious and charming, and most importantly, he seemed to adore my daughter. Seeing Laura smile around him eased some of the ache of Linda's absence. I welcomed him into our lives with open arms. I contributed more than I probably should have to their wedding, wanting to give her the day of her dreams, and I gifted them a hefty down payment for their first house. It's family money, I insisted when they tried to call it a loan. I was just happy watching her build a life of her own. In time, two beautiful grandchildren arrived, first little Jacob, then baby Ellie. I remember holding each of them for the first time, feeling a surge of purpose and joy. Being a grandfather brought light back into my world. I built Jacob a wooden rocking horse for his second birthday and let Ellie gum on my finger when she was teething. My Sundays were once again filled with laughter and tiny footsteps. Our tradition of family dinners continued whenever possible. I was proud of the family we had, certain that the bond we shared was unbreakable. But over time, I began to notice changes in Laura and Travis's behavior toward me. At first they were almost imperceptible. Travis became busy more often, they missed a Sunday dinner here and there. I didn't mind, they had their own lives and young children, after all. I was understanding whenever they canceled plans. "We'll do it next week, Dad," Laura would say. Next week would become next month. When we did see each other, the visits felt different. Rushed. Transactional, even. I would fuss over Jacob and Ellie, who by then were 5 and 3, and they would chatter about school and cartoons, those pure little voices giving me such peace. But I sometimes caught Laura looking at her watch or exchanging quiet glances with Travis, as if they were anxious to be elsewhere. I brushed off my worries. Young parents are busy, I told myself. I remembered how hectic my life had been when Laura was small and I was juggling work and family. I chose to be grateful for what time they did spare me. Then last fall, I had a health scare. After decades working construction and later carpentry, my knees and back weren't what they used to be. One chilly October morning, I slipped on wet leaves in my driveway and fractured my ankle. It wasn't too serious, but I needed surgery and a few nights in the hospital. Suddenly, our roles reversed, my daughter fussed over me, and I was the one being cared for. I hated feeling like a burden, but I'll admit a part of me was glad for their company. At the hospital, Travis and Laura came to see me with the kids in tow, balloons and a get-well card scribbled in crayon. Laura's eyes were red from crying when she first saw me in that bed. "Oh, Dad, you have to be more careful," she said, holding my hand tight. In that moment, all my worries about our growing distance vanished. My little girl was still in there, and she still cared. When I was discharged, they insisted I not be alone while I recovered. Just until you're back on your feet, Travis said. It's no trouble for us to stay and help out. I was moved by the offer and agreed it would be good to have help. I was on crutches and under strict orders to rest. So they moved into my house for what we all thought would be a short time. It felt almost like old times at first. The house bustled with energy again. I'd wake up to the sound of Ellie's laughter or Jacob's little feet thumping down the hall. Laura sometimes cooked breakfast, filling the kitchen with the smell of coffee and cinnamon pancakes the way Linda used to on Sunday mornings. In those early weeks of my recovery, I often thought how blessed I was. So many widowers my age lived all alone, yet here I was, surrounded by family in my own home. However, as the weeks went on, the mood in the house began to shift. I noticed decisions were being made without me. One afternoon I hobbled out of my room to find the living room completely rearranged. My old armchair, the one I sat in every evening to read the paper, was gone. In its place was a sleek new recliner I'd never seen. "Where's my chair?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light, though I felt unsettled. "Oh, Dad," Laura said from the couch, barely glancing up from her phone. It was falling apart. "We tossed it out. Travis thought you'd be more comfortable in a new one, so we ordered this online. It came today." I ran a hand along the unfamiliar leather. It was a fine chair, plush and expensive looking, but I missed the threadbare fabric of my old companion, molded by years of use. I opened my mouth to protest, then closed it. They meant well, I told myself. They were trying to help. "Thank you," I murmured, lowering myself into the new recliner. It swallowed me in cushions that hadn't yet conformed to my shape. Laura smiled and returned to whatever she was doing, as if it were only a minor change. Other little improvements followed. Travis hired a crew to tidy up my yard, and I stepped outside on my crutches one day to find my vegetable patch, Linda's beloved garden, gone. The raised flower beds and tomato vines we tended together were ripped out, replaced by neat sod. I nearly wept. When I confronted Travis, he looked genuinely surprised at my distress. "Those plots were a mess, Richard," he said, using my first name in a way that rubbed me wrong. My son-in-law had always called me Sir or Dad before. "We thought a clean lawn would be easier for you to maintain. We can plant a few low-maintenance bushes or something later." "It was Linda's garden," I said quietly, struggling to keep my voice even as I balanced on my crutches. My hands trembled with anger. Travis's confident expression faltered. We didn't realize it meant that much to you. I'm sorry. We were thinking of curb appeal and, well, making things easier for you." Making things easier for me. I heard that phrase often in those days. Every change under my roof was explained as an improvement or convenience for my benefit. But each one left me feeling like I was losing pieces of my life, bit by bit. One evening about a month into my recovery, I gingerly reached for a second helping of mashed potatoes at dinner and caught Laura and Travis exchanging a quick look. "Dad," Laura said gently, "remember what Dr. Miller said about watching your diet. We need to be careful with your cholesterol." The tone of her voice, patient, mildly chiding, made something twist uncomfortably in my chest. It was the tone I used to use when she was a teenager making poor food choices. I set down the serving spoon and forced a smile. "Of course," I muttered. That night, I lay in bed feeling more than just the ache of my mending ankle. I felt old. When had the dynamic between us shifted so drastically? When had I become someone to be managed? Perhaps it truly began when my ankle finally improved and I suggested they could return to their own home. By then I was moving around well and regaining independence. We were in the living room, me in my new armchair, Jacob building a block tower at my feet, Travis watching a football game on the TV he'd mounted on my wall to replace my smaller set. "I'm feeling much better," I ventured. "You've all been so helpful, but I don't want to disrupt the kids' routines any longer. Maybe it's time you moved back home. I can manage on my own now." Laura and Travis exchanged glances. She set aside the laundry she'd been folding. Dad, don't be ridiculous. The kids aren't uprooted at all, they're happy here with you. And we want to make sure you're really okay before we go anywhere. I frowned slightly. I appreciate it, truly. But I worry I'm intruding. Jacob must miss his friends in your neighborhood, and I'm sure you two have your own lives. We've arranged everything just fine, Laura interrupted, a bit sharply. She softened her tone almost immediately. Actually, we've been thinking it might be best, for everyone, if we stay here. Permanently. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. Stay, here. You mean live here? In my house? Travis muted the TV and turned toward me. The house is plenty big, and this way we can all take care of each other. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing. It makes sense, Dad. His smile was polite, but I detected something steely in his eyes. My heart began to thud. They had their own home, why would they give that up unless something was wrong? Is something wrong with your house? I asked slowly. Are you having trouble with the mortgage or? No, nothing like that, Travis said quickly. We just think this arrangement is better. You're not getting any younger, and this place is a lot to handle alone. We'd all be happier together. Laura nodded along, though her smile looked forced. I suddenly felt very small. This was my home, yet they spoke as if it was already decided that it would become theirs. I don't have to decide anything this minute, I replied, trying to sound agreeable while my mind raced. Let's just see how it goes. They seemed satisfied with that answer. But in the weeks that followed, I realized they had already made the decision for me. Without another word on the subject, they took steps to cement the living arrangement. They transferred Jacob to the local school in my neighborhood. They moved more furniture over from their old house, gradually emptying it. My attic and garage filled up with their extra belongings. The guest room was repainted for Ellie, and Jacob took over my study as his bedroom. My desk and files were relegated to a corner of the basement. Piece by piece, their life overtook mine. One morning, a moving truck even appeared in my driveway. I watched in a daze from the porch as strangers carried in a headboard and dressers. We figured we might as well bring the rest of our furniture over, Travis said casually, wiping sweat from his brow. No point paying for two places when we're all here. I wanted to protest that I hadn't agreed to this, but the sight of little Ellie handing her mother a favorite dollhouse silenced me. They were acting like it was a done deal, and I had allowed it to happen by never firmly saying no. I felt a swell of resentment and guilt all at once. I had wanted family close, hadn't I? Wasn't this what many elderly parents longed for? Maybe I was being selfish or prideful, wanting my own space back. So I swallowed my misgivings and nodded as they settled in for good. It will be nice having everyone under one roof, I murmured, more to convince myself than them. Laura hugged me, and for a moment I convinced myself she was right. For a while, we found a routine. Some evenings truly were pleasant. I'd help Jacob with his homework at the dining table while Laura cooked dinner. I'd read Ellie her favorite picture book before bed. We shared living space, and there were moments of genuine warmth and laughter that reminded me why I loved having a family around. But there were also moments I felt like an unwanted guest in my own home. I realized I was asking permission to do things that used to be automatic, like inviting an old friend over for coffee or deciding what channel to watch on TV. I'd been parent and homeowner all my adult life, now I walked on eggshells, deferential in my own house. One day I came home from a short walk and found the locks had been changed. My key wouldn't open the front door. I panicked for a second, jiggling the knob, until Travis opened it with a new key in hand. "Oh, I meant to tell you," he said. "We upgraded to an electronic security lock. Here." He handed me a keycard and showed me how to use a keypad by the door. "It's for safety, in case you ever forget your keys or if someone unauthorized tries to get in." I hadn't asked for a new lock or a security system with cameras on my porch. But they installed it regardless, linking the system to their phones. I noticed that whenever I left the house alone, within minutes I'd get a text from Laura, "Everything okay, Dad? Where did you go?" At first I was touched by her concern. But I soon realized it wasn't just care, it was monitoring. I often overheard them murmuring behind closed doors late at night. Fragments of tense whispers would reach me, "We have to do something sooner rather than later," or, "It's for his own good." I tried to ignore it, but dread coiled in my stomach. They were planning something about me. Winter passed in this uneasy balance. By February, my ankle had fully healed, and I was physically as capable as I'd been before the fall. But by then, I realized I wasn't the master of my own life anymore. In subtle ways, my role in the household had shifted from provider and patriarch to something akin to a dependent. The realization made me feel ashamed, as if I truly had become the burden they kept insisting I wasn't. Still, I was hesitant to spark a confrontation. They were my family, all I had left, and I feared alienating them. I told myself things might improve on their own. One cold evening in early March, however, an incident finally shattered the polite facade I'd been maintaining. I had offered to watch the kids so Laura and Travis could have a rare date night. They eagerly accepted and went out for dinner. I truly didn't mind, I adore my grandchildren and was happy to give the couple a break. That night, after reading bedtime stories and tucking the little ones in, I settled into the living room with a crossword puzzle. The house was quiet, for once, it was just me awake under my roof. I remember thinking I might make a cup of tea and enjoy a peaceful hour of solitude. But then headlights swept across the window as Laura and Travis's car pulled into the driveway. I heard the low rumble of their voices outside, and realized they hadn't come in yet. Curiously, I cracked the living room window, just in time to catch a snippet of their conversation, spoken on speakerphone to someone. "It's his house for now," I heard Travis say in a hushed, eager tone. "We'll sort everything out soon. Thanks again for the advice, Paul. We'll be in touch about those listings." Listings? My heart kicked into a gallop. Then Laura's voice, "Yes, absolutely. By summer he should be moved and settled, so spring is perfect for putting the house on the market. We really appreciate your help, okay? Good night." I stood frozen just inside the curtains. They were talking about selling my house. And moving me, where? My blood ran cold. I carefully peeled back a corner of the curtain and saw them just outside the front door. Laura was putting her phone into her purse. Travis had an arm around her. I pushed the front door open and stepped onto the porch. My hands were shaking, but I fought to keep my voice level. "Is there something you two want to tell me?" They both jumped, startled to see me. Laura's face went pale in the glow of the porch light. "Dad! You're awake." "I couldn't sleep," I said, which was true enough. I eyed them both. "Heard you talking, something about the house on the market." Laura opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Travis cleared his throat. "Dad, let's get inside. It's cold out here." We all moved into the living room, closing the door softly so as not to wake the children. My heart was pounding so hard I wondered if they could hear it. "Now," I said, keeping my voice low but firm, "tell me what's going on." "My house on the market." "What was that about?" Laura and Travis exchanged a nervous look. He nodded at her, as if to say go ahead. She took a deep breath, eyes avoiding mine. We were going to discuss it with you soon, Dad. Please try to understand. We've been thinking about the future. About your safety." Just tell me straight," I interrupted, unable to bear the careful preamble. "Are you planning to sell my home and move me somewhere else?" Laura winced at my blunt phrasing. Travis put a hand on her shoulder and stepped forward. "Richard, nothing has been decided yet. We were only exploring options. Of course we would have involved you in any final decision." I stared at him, feeling a vein pulsing in my temple. His tone was the same smooth one he used in business calls, too calm, too practiced. I turned to my daughter. Laura. She finally met my gaze. Her eyes were wet. Dad, please don't get upset. We were looking into a place called Brookside for you. It's a beautiful assisted living residence not far from here. They have medical staff, your own little apartment, lots of activities. We thought, her voice broke. We thought it might be best. For your health. And yes, we talked to a realtor friend about potentially selling the house, only so that the money could pay for the best care and accommodations for you. A cold, bitter quiet fell over the room as I absorbed her words. I felt as if I'd been sucker punched. The best care and accommodations. I see. Travis piped up, talking quickly, really, it's all for you. That house is too much for one person to maintain, and we don't want you living somewhere unsafe if something happens. At Brookside there'd be no stairs to worry about, on-site doctors, stop. I held up my hand. I couldn't listen to them justify it any further. So you were going to put me in a nursing home and sell my house out from under me? And when was I to be made aware of these grand plans? After the papers were signed. Laura bristled through her tears. It's not a nursing home, Dad, it's upscale living. And we would have talked to you soon. We were trying to figure out how to ease you into the idea. Ease me into it, I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. So, what was the plan? One day when I came back from a doctor appointment, you'd have a realtor's sign on the lawn and a brochure for a retirement home on my pillow. That's not fair, Travis snapped, a bit of his temper flaring. We were never going to do this behind your back. We know it's a big change and we were going to have a family meeting. We were only gathering information. I let out a bark of laughter, short, humorless. Gathering information. Calling a realtor to value my home, touring a facility for me, none of which I knew about. You don't see how that qualifies as going behind my back. Laura's composure crumbled. We didn't want to worry you until we had a solid plan. This has all been about taking care of you, Dad. Why can't you see that? Tears rolled down her cheeks. Ever since Mom died, I've been terrified of losing you too. After you fell, after the surgery. I don't want to come over and find you hurt or worse, because you were alone and no one was there to help. Her voice trembled on that last word. In another circumstance, I might have rushed to comfort her. But I was too hurt myself to offer comfort. I understand being concerned, I said, struggling to keep my voice from shaking, but what you two did, organizing to push me out of my own home without even talking to me first, that's betrayal, Laura. You treated me like a senile old man who can't make his own decisions. We were trying to help you, she sobbed. I never wanted to hurt you. I looked at my daughter, truly looked at her, as she stood there wringing her hands. This was the same girl whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose tears I'd wiped when she had nightmares. And here we were, facing each other like strangers on opposite sides of a divide. Travis's voice cut into my thoughts, defensive and firm. We haven't pushed you out, Richard. We haven't done anything yet. You're overreacting. Maybe we should all just cool down and discuss this in the morning with clearer heads. I turned my gaze on him. Overreacting. Let me ask you this, Travis, when were you going to mention it? When an offer was made on my house? When you'd already signed the paperwork because you knew best and assumed I'd go along? He opened his mouth but had no answer. His silence spoke volumes. That's what I thought, I said bitterly. I could feel my blood pressure climbing. I took a slow breath, trying to steady myself. I had heard enough to know exactly where I stood. I'm going to make something very clear, I said, enunciating each word. This is my home. You have no right to sell it or to force me to live anywhere I don't choose. And as of this moment, you will cease all your behind-the-scenes planning. Is that understood? Laura wiped her face, her expression shifting from sorrow to something like incredulity. She had never heard me speak so sternly to her. "Dad, please, is that understood?" I repeated, my voice low but seething with a decade's worth of pent-up frustration. Travis's jaw tightened. "Understood," he said, though his tone made it clear he wasn't happy about it. Laura stared at me, shocked and hurt. "We were only trying to do the right thing," she whispered. "The right thing would have been to talk to me," I replied, gentler now but still firm. "Not decide my life behind my back." A tense, painful silence enveloped us. Finally, Laura spoke, voice small. What do you want us to do, Dad?" I sighed, suddenly exhausted. I felt old in that moment, but also strangely resolute. "For now, nothing. Go to bed. We'll deal with this in the morning." They hesitated, but I turned and left the room, effectively ending the discussion. I heard them murmuring to each other as I shut myself in my bedroom. My heart was hammering in my chest, and I had to sit on the edge of the bed to catch my breath. I barely slept that night. Rage, hurt, and disbelief swirled in my mind. They were going to sell my house, the house I built with my wife, the home where all my memories lived, and pack me off to some facility like unwanted furniture. And they thought they were justified, that they were being kind. By the time dawn's gray light crept through my window, something had hardened in me. Love or no love, I wasn't going to let this stand. I rose early, dressed quietly, and left the house before either of them were up. I needed to think and to act, and I couldn't do that under the same roof right now. First, I went to my bank. I wanted to double-check everything about the house deed and my accounts, make sure no one had added their name or anything underhanded. Everything was still solely in my name, as I suspected, but it eased my mind to confirm it officially. Control of the house was legally mine, for now. Next, I made a call to an attorney, a lawyer named Peter Wong who had helped me with some estate planning after Linda died. When I explained the situation in a few terse sentences, he agreed to meet me that very afternoon. Sitting in Mr. Wong's polished, wood-paneled office, I laid out what was happening, that I feared my own daughter might try to force me out of my home or strong-arm me into giving up control of my assets. Saying it aloud felt surreal, and yet the recent evidence was undeniable. Mr. Wong listened carefully, his face professional but with a crease of concern in his brow. Then he told me plainly what my rights were. Legally, no one, not even family, could make me sell my home or move out without my consent unless I were declared mentally incompetent by a court. And clearly, I was of sound mind. As long as I kept my affairs in my own hands, I was safe. That knowledge hardened my resolve. I quietly asked Mr. Wong to help me put my house up for sale, discreetly and quickly. His eyebrows rose in surprise, but he nodded. He had contacts, he said, real estate investors who could make a cash offer without a public listing. A quiet sale could be arranged in a matter of weeks. I told him that's exactly what I wanted. I also instructed him to prepare a new estate plan. I wasn't about to let Laura and Travis profit from any of this. Instead, I set aside a significant portion of the expected proceeds from the house in a trust for Jacob and Ellie's education. My grandchildren would be provided for, but their parents wouldn't be able to touch a cent. The rest of the assets and remaining money would go into my personal retirement accounts, to fund my life, on my terms. Leaving the lawyer's office that day, I felt steadier than I had in a long time. The plan was in motion, and I had the law on my side. Now, I just had to act as if everything were normal while my secret plan unfolded. Over the next couple of weeks, I played the role of the contrite, understanding father. I pretended to reconsider their suggestions. I even let Laura show me glossy brochures for Brookside, nodding politely at the pictures of smiling seniors in well-appointed common rooms. Inside, I felt sick, but I didn't let it show. In fact, I went so far as to say it did look like a nice place. Laura's relief was palpable, she seemed cautiously optimistic that I was coming around. What I really was doing was biding my time. Behind their backs, I quietly packed away the things that mattered most to me: old photo albums, Linda's jewelry box, personal documents, my military service medals. I rented a small storage unit across town and moved boxes there bit by bit when I was ostensibly running errands. I didn't want to tip my hand by suddenly packing a suitcase, but I made sure that if it came to leaving abruptly, I wouldn't have to leave my precious memories behind. Meanwhile, Mr. Wong worked efficiently. Within 10 days, he found a serious cash buyer for the house, an investment company that didn't mind an expedited sale and minimal fuss. The offer was a good one. The closing date was set just 3 weeks out. During those weeks, I was on edge constantly, afraid that Laura or Travis would sense something. But they were so convinced of my compliance by then that they didn't question why I was out of the house more often. I told them I joined a senior book club at the library to get out a bit. Laura had actually looked pleased that I was adjusting to a social life, as she put it. They didn't notice the subtle disappearance of some items, since the house was so full of their belongings now. I was polite, even pleasant, with them. I allowed Travis to include me in a meeting with his realtor friend, just to get an idea of the house's market value. I sat through that meeting smiling and nodding while the realtor walked through my rooms taking notes. Oh, how Travis must have felt victorious at my apparent capitulation. Little did they know, I had already signed documents accepting an offer from someone else. At night, alone in my room, I sometimes second-guessed myself. It's a heavy thing to turn your back on your own child, to essentially pull the rug out from under them. They had done wrong by me, but the pang of guilt never fully left. Late one night, I opened an old photo album, Laura at age 7, missing her front teeth and grinning as I held the back of her bicycle, Laura at 16, proudly holding up her driver's license, Laura on her wedding day, eyes bright with joy I hadn't seen since her mother's time. Tears blurred those images. Maybe I should give her one more chance. A voice in my heart whispered. But then I recalled standing on that porch in the cold, overhearing the two of them coolly mapping out how to eliminate my independence, how to seize what I had built. She had laughed that night, excited about the money they'd get from selling my home. That memory steeled me again. 3 days before the closing date, I secured a short-term rental apartment on the other side of town. It wasn't much, a one-bedroom in an older complex, but it was clean and available immediately. I didn't move in yet, I merely signed the lease and picked up the keys, keeping them hidden in my jacket pocket. I intended to stay in the house until the sale was final, to avoid tipping them off. But I also wanted to confront them one last time after everything was done, so they knew exactly what had happened, and why. The closing took place on a Wednesday morning. I left the house under the pretense of going to the library, my heart thudding all the way to Mr. Wong's office. I signed the final papers, and just like that, my house, the house I'd spent 40 years in, wasn't mine anymore. Legally, it now belonged to the investment company, though they graciously agreed I could remain until the weekend to finish moving out. I can't describe the mixture of grief and grim satisfaction that washed over me as I drove back from that meeting. I pulled over a few blocks from home and just sat in the car for a while, hands shaking on the steering wheel. It's done. I had actually done it. That evening, I decided it was time for the final reveal. The sale was irreversible, the money would hit my account by the next morning, and my new place was ready. After dinner, which was a stilted, awkward affair, none of us had really talked about the late-night confrontation, and we were in a holding pattern of shallow civility. I cleared my throat and asked if we could have a family discussion. Now? Laura asked, exchanging a glance with Travis. The kids were watching a cartoon in the den. Now, I affirmed, standing up. Let's sit in the living room. I have something I need to say to you both. They followed me, looking curious and a bit wary. I did not sit, but remained standing in the center of the room. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face as neutral as I could. I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few weeks, I began. Travis offered a careful smile. So have we, Dad. We're glad you've been more open to. I held up a hand to silence him. Please, let me speak first. He closed his mouth. Laura perched on the edge of the sofa, twisting her fingers in her lap. I drew a breath. This was it. I want you to know, I said slowly, that I heard every word of that conversation you had with your realtor friend. I saw Laura flinch and Travis stiffen, but I continued. I know you plan to sell my house and move me to Brookside. What you didn't know is that I had a plan of my own. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded document, the proof of sale and transfer of ownership for the house. With deliberate calm, I placed it on the coffee table in front of them. As of this morning, I said, this house is no longer mine. It's been sold. For a second, they didn't seem to understand. Travis furrowed his brow. Laura picked up the paper hesitantly and scanned it. I watched her face, saw her eyes widen in shock as the words sank in. Sold, she echoed. What is this? You sold the house? Yes. My voice was steely. I sold it. To a private buyer. The sale is complete. But, you can't, she burst out, half rising. How could you do that? When? How? I shot back, anger finally seeping into my tone. Easy, I'm the sole owner. I didn't need anyone's permission. Travis snatched the document from her and looked at it, his face draining of color. This says the closing was today. You've had this in the works. I nodded. Ever since that night I overheard your plans, I've been taking steps. Contrary to what you both seem to believe, I'm neither helpless nor incapable of making my own decisions. Laura's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came. She looked at me as if seeing a stranger. Travis, on the other hand, flushed red with anger. I don't believe this. You sold the house out of spite. To get back at us for trying to help you. I let out a short laugh. To get back at you. Perhaps. But mostly to protect myself. You were not trying to help me, Travis. You were trying to control me, and profit in the process. Don't insult my intelligence by denying it. We never wanted to profit, Laura said, tears spilling anew. We only wanted you somewhere safe. Any money from the house sale was going to be for your care, Dad, not for us. I leveled a gaze at her. Perhaps in some corner of your heart you believe that. But I heard enough to know better. The two of you were talking about using the money for things you wanted, the house in Boulder with a mountain view, was it? The life you'd lead once I was tucked away out of sight, my assets conveniently under your control. Laura's face crumpled. Daddy, she whispered, using the childhood name she hadn't called me in years, please, we never meant for you to feel unwelcome. We thought we were doing the right thing, truly. I felt a pang, hearing, Daddy, and seeing my little girl and the broken woman before me. But I steeled myself. You handled it in the worst possible way. And you succeeded in making me feel completely unwelcome in my own home. That's why I took matters into my own hands. Travis threw the sale document back onto the table, rising to his feet. So what now? You've sold it, where are we supposed to live? Where are you going to live? His concern for my welfare at the end of that question was clearly an afterthought. I shook my head at him. That is no longer my problem. I'll be moving out tomorrow. I've arranged a place for myself. Laura looked stricken. You're leaving? Tomorrow? Yes. My voice gentled just a fraction. I think it's for the best. I can't stay here, not after what's happened. And legally, the house belongs to someone else now, so, you'll all have to leave as well, in short order. I'm told the new owners plan to renovate and flip it. You sold our home out from under us, Travis said, disbelief and rage coloring his tone. Our home. I echoed sharply. This was my home. You tried to make it yours, and now it will be nobody's, just a piece of property for an investor. Congratulations. He looked like he wanted to yell, or hit something. But with a visible effort, he swallowed his anger and said in a low, trembling voice, "This was incredibly cruel. Laura only had the best intentions and you twist it like this, cruel." My own anger spiked again. "You want to talk about cruel? Cruel is plotting to uproot your aging father and sell off his life's home without including him in the decision. Cruel is making him feel small and burdensome, as if he hasn't given you decades of love and support. Don't you dare lecture me on cruelty, Travis." He looked away, jaw clenched. I turned to Laura, who sat silently weeping into her hands. Seeing her like that nearly undid me. My voice softened. "Laura. I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing it to save myself. Can you understand that?" She raised her eyes to mine, red, pleading. "Daddy, please, please don't go. We're sorry. I'm sorry. You're right, we handled it terribly. I was so scared of something happening to you that I listened to Travis and let him make these plans. But I never wanted to hurt you. Please, we can fix this." A sad smile tugged at my lips. "It's already done. And honestly, maybe it's for the best. This way, there's nothing left for us to fight over." She stood and came toward me, but stopped a foot away, as if unsure if she had the right to hug me. "What have I done?" she whispered. "I drove you away. My God, what have I done to our family?" I had to look away, blinking back tears of my own. "What's done is done," I managed. "I truly hope you and Travis find what you're looking for in life. But you won't find it by betraying those who love you." Travis put a hand on Laura's shoulder, whether in support or to pull her back, I don't know. She shrugged him off and suddenly stepped forward, throwing her arms around me. I stiffened in surprise. Through her sobs I heard her choke out, "I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. We were wrong." My own arms hovered, then slowly came up to pat her back. I inhaled the familiar scent of my little girl's shampoo, now mixed with the smell of a grown woman's perfume, and felt my heart breaking and healing all at once. I said nothing, because I couldn't trust my voice. After a long moment, she released me. "I know I don't deserve it," she said, trembling, "but if you can ever forgive me, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you." I cupped her tear-streaked face in my palm gently. "I already forgive you," I whispered. And it was true, in that moment, despite everything, I forgave her. But things can't go back to how they were. Not now. We all need some time and space to heal from this. She nodded miserably. Behind her, Travis had sunk onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. He hadn't said a word since accusing me of cruelty. Perhaps there was nothing more for him to say. Without another word, I turned and walked out. I went to my bedroom, closing the door softly. On the other side of that door, I heard Laura begin to sob again and Travis murmuring to her, his tone frustrated and sorrowful. I tuned it out. I had my own sorrow, and strangely, a measure of relief, to tend to. I won't pretend it was easy that night. I cried as I packed the remaining necessities into my old suitcase, tears blurring my vision as I took one last look at the familiar four walls that had witnessed so much of my life. Beneath the heartbreak, however, was a grim sense of vindication, and a freedom I hadn't felt in years. In the half-year since that day, the raw hurt has gradually given way to a calm acceptance, and even a measure of hope. I moved into a modest apartment across town, smaller and quieter than the old house, but I made it my own. I found new routines that give me purpose, volunteering at a local community workshop, reconnecting with an old friend for coffee on Tuesdays. Life is simpler, and sometimes lonely, but it's mine to live on my terms. For a while, Laura kept her distance. But eventually, my phone rang and it was my daughter, her voice tentative and filled with tears. Our first conversations were careful, fragile things. In time, she began bringing the grandchildren to meet me at a nearby park on occasional weekends. Those afternoons, I pushed Jacob on the swings and let Ellie show me her latest crayon drawings. For a few hours, I can simply be their grandpa again. One sunny day, as the kids chased each other across the grass, Laura sat beside me on a bench and asked quietly, "Dad, do you think you could ever forgive us for what we did?" There were tears in her eyes. I took a long moment before answering. "I forgave you the day I left," I admitted. "But trust, that will take longer to rebuild." She nodded, understanding the difference. I could see a weight lift from her just hearing those words. I think, in her own way, my daughter is trying to become the kind of person who truly appreciates family. Whether we'll ever be as close as before, I don't know. But I do know we still love each other, and that's something to hold on to. Tonight I sit by the window in my little living room, a cup of chamomile tea warming my hands. A gentle rain patters against the glass, and I catch my reflection, a few more gray hairs, a few more lines, but also a steadiness in my eyes that wasn't there a year ago. I lost some things that day I stood up for myself, illusions, and a certain innocence in how I view my family. But I gained far more. I gained peace. I gained self-respect. I remembered my own worth. The journey wasn't easy, but I would do it all over again to reclaim the dignity that no one, even those I love, had the right to take away. I've learned that sometimes justice and closure don't come with fanfare, they arrive in the quiet moments, in the simple fact of waking up with your heart a little lighter. I finish my tea and prepare for bed. For the first time in a long time, I fall asleep feeling truly at peace.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.